Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing Archer 74 Bluff in a 15-minute game on chess.com. It's a climbing the rating ladder game. Let's open with e4 and see what my opponent responds with. He's rated 1376. This is an educational series where I play lower rated players and I explain my thought process along the way, as usual. And he is defending with the main line. Okay, so I'm going to play bishop c4, going with the Italian game. This is, I think, a good opening if you're at this rating level. If you're, really any rating level. But it's a very good line if you're starting out with e4 because it can lead to open tactical positions, fundamental positions that are important to know as you're progressing in your chess development. So that's why I have a slight preference for bishop c4 as opposed to bishop b5, especially when you're starting out. And f5, wow, that's an aggressive move. So trying to undermine the e4 pawn. So this is possible after knight f3 on move 2. I'm not aware of this move on move 3 here after bishop c4. It seems exceedingly dangerous when I already have my bishop here. Then again, if I take the pawn, maybe his idea is to play d5 with a gain of time. Push the pawn to d5. I could play bishop b5 after that. I have a feeling here that a counter strike in the center is a good idea for me. So this move d4. Because opening the number of lines, the maximum number of files and diagonals in a position like this with my slight lead development and his potentially already compromised king should benefit me. I'm especially eager to see if I can take advantage of this diagonal leading right towards his king. So yeah, that would be one of my candidate moves, d4 for sure. I'm going to consider. Definitely still considering the capture on f5. That's the very first thing that came to mind. And like I said, if he plays d5, I can move my bishop again. I don't like the fact that he does get two strong pawns in the center if I play that way. So I'm leaning towards d4. Possible continuation after d4. If he takes on e4, I can play knight takes e5, knight takes e5, d takes e5, and I really like the look of that. Again, better development. His knight's going to have a hard time coming out to f6. I am pausing to think here, as you can see. This is the first major surprise in a move I've never seen before. So if that happens to you in a game, you should definitely pause to think, even if it's in the opening. Yeah, I'm going to go with d4. I really like the look of this. If he takes here, I think knight takes d4 is fine, and it's going to be very dangerous for him to try to grab a pawn in the center. I might even be able to demonstrate why. But if you can visualize this, e takes d4, knight takes d4, f takes e4, I can play knight takes c6, and then assuming he takes towards the center, b takes c6, I'll have this move queen h5 check. And then if g6, there's queen e5, which will be a fork on the king and the rook. That's quite a few arrows, but good job if you followed that. That's a typical idea to know when your opponent has pushed their f-pawn, when they push the forget about it pawn very early on like that. But let's see how he responds. He does take on e4 instead of d4. Okay, so I was thinking knight takes e5 here. Yeah, no reason really to deviate from this. He could play d5 here potentially, but I'll have queen h5 to consider, also bishop b5. I like how this is shaping up. The queen-knight combination with the queen possibly landing on h5 is especially dangerous to black. Okay, knight f6, so I can play knight f7 and then just win the rook in the corner. I can also play bishop f7 check, force him to play king e7, but that looks a little less clear. My bishop isn't so stable. So knight f7, on the other hand, that just looks to win a rook. He might end up trapping my knight, but knight f7, queen e7, knight takes h8. He does have queen b4 check, but I can play knight d2 and defend the bishop. So I don't think I have to look too much further here. There aren't really any other moves to consider other than bishop f7 and knight f7. So let's go ahead and play this. Yeah, and he instantly plays queen e7. I'm going to take. And d5. Okay. So I was actually talking about this type of situation with a student the other day, where my student won a rook in the corner in almost exactly this same fashion, but he lagged in development. His opponent got all this counterplay. His opponent eventually castled queenside and won the knight in the corner. And meanwhile, my student never really caught up in development. So development is going to be important here. He's hitting the bishop with tempo. He's opening his light square bishop. Probably I'll play bishop b5. I'm also kind of tempted to play bishop e2. That might be decent too, just so that bishop g4 is not possible. Takes the sting out of that move. Maybe that's better than bishop b5. Yeah, just bishop e2, play knight c3. You shouldn't get too attached to the knight in this situation. It is trapped. I mean, if black really wants to win it, they're probably going to be able to win it. I might be able to get a pawn for it. So yeah, I like the look of bishop e2. Let's just play that. Looks like a sturdy move. Yeah, just stop bishop g4 with tempo. So this line is apparently called the Rousseau Gambit. Okay, learned something new today. Always learning, right? I've been playing chess for over 20 years. I'm an international master, but still learning. That's what I love about this game, guys, honestly. It's a constant challenge, and how much you want to challenge yourself can vary depending upon where you are in your chess career. You know, if you are aiming for maximum improvement, there are many avenues to do that in chess. If you just want to play for fun and don't care about the results, you can do that too. But there is always something new to absorb and appreciate. I wonder how many opening names there are in chess. There's got to be thousands, definitely, if you consider all the sub-variations. Okay, so black plays g6. Now, I could take this pawn, but that seems premature because he's not even attacking the knight yet. So I should probably wait, make him play a move to attack the knight. So let's consider how I want to capitalize, or not capitalize, but complete my development, or what way I'm going to bring my pieces into the game, really. Thinking about moving the dark square bishop out, so bishop f4 comes to mind. That might allow queen b4 check in some instances, so maybe I can wait on that. Probably just castles is a good idea. You could make an argument for castling queenside later in this type of position, but it does take more moves to arrange. Knight c3, bishop e3 again, moving the bishop, but yeah, this queen b4 check ideas. I think I'm just going to go with knight c3. That looks pretty clean. I do block my c-pawn, but I think it's better to develop versus try to attack in the center, especially given that black is probably going to castle queenside. I want my d4 pawn to be a little more fortified, so I'm actually thinking about putting the bishop here, trying to set up knight takes d5. I'm betting that black is going to play bishop g7, and then I'll take here and play bishop g5. I also could play bishop g5 right away, but I think knight takes g6 is a little cleaner. So I've used a third of my time. This is 15 plus 0, no increment. So got to be mindful of the time. And you can see my time usage on the right-hand side here. Spent almost 2 minutes deciding on what to play on move 4. But again, my opponent surprised me with this f5 move, so I think it's justified to spend more time than normal. I would recommend playing with an increment in these rapid games if possible, just so you avoid any crazy scenarios where it's coming down to just a mouse moving battle. Even having a 5-second increment is pretty nice. But I saw this player throwing out this 15 plus 0, so decided to click on it. Okay, and black's thinking here, but I don't think there's too many moves to consider. It seems like he will have to go after this knight soon. I mean, you could develop the light square bishop first, but I would think bishop g7 should be played, just to get the bishop in the action. On queen g7, I can still play knight takes g6. I might be a little more inclined to play bishop g5 there. So if queen takes h8, I can take and then play knight takes d5. Winning this d5 pawn would be very nice. Okay, and he does play queen g7. Yeah, so why am I more inclined to play bishop g5 here versus knight takes g6? Well, if knight takes g6, black has the option of taking with a queen this time because he didn't play bishop g7. And then I'd have to watch the g2 pawn. If I castled, for instance, bishop h3 might be a problem. So, yeah, I kind of like the idea of just playing bishop g5, developing a piece. Bishop f4 is another decent-looking candidate move, going after c7. Yeah, c7 could be weak. Bishop f4, maybe knight b5 on the horizon. Yeah, I mean, I'm briefly considering some fancy stuff again with knight takes g6, queen takes g6, maybe knight takes d5, hoping for knight takes d5, bishop h5 with the skewer, but it looks a little messy. Although possibly good, to be honest. I don't want to play unnecessarily fancy here. That's how you can get in trouble in these positions, but that might be an option. Knight takes g6. My knight's dead anyways. He's going to take it. Queen takes, knight takes d5. If queen takes g2, then I do have knight takes f6 check in between move. He has to make a king move, something like king here, and rook f1. That's possible to play this way. I'm going to try it, actually. Yeah, I think this is justified. And let's see which way he takes. He might even just take with the pawn. You never know. Yeah, and if queen takes, and if for some reason I decide knight takes d5 isn't the correct follow-up here, yeah, he does take with the pawn. But if for some reason I decided it was too risky to go for knight takes d5, I could play g3, some move like that. Okay, so now I just want to continue developing. Bishop g5 looks really good. Bring the bishop out, threaten bishop takes f6, followed by knight takes d5. I don't think there's much not to like about that move, so let's do it. This is a good time to just assess the material. So if we count the number of pawns, I have one extra pawn, and I'm also up what we call the exchange, which means I have a rook against my opponent's minor piece. He has all 4 minor pieces. I have only 3, but I have an extra rook. So in total, I have a 3-point advantage here, going by material. And development-wise, I'm not really even lagging anymore. He still has to get these 2 bishops out. I can castle on the king side if I want. Now I might be more inclined to castle king side, because black did not take with the queen, so that queen, which would be sitting on g6 had he taken with the queen a move ago, it's not eyeing g2 or my king that could be on g1. I feel a little more comfortable castling now. But if I want to, queen d2 and castles queenside is still a good option. But let's see what black plays here. I think he should play bishop e6. I can't draw arrows today, but bishop e6, developing and overprotecting d5. And then my candidate moves would be either castles or queen d2. I'm thinking castles. Maybe with an eye towards playing f3 after that, moving the forget about it pawn, but only because I'm already safe. And try to open up my rook on the file. Yeah, he does play bishop there. Let's castle. Note that d4 is protected by my queen, so there's no issues there. If black moves this knight, I do have to make sure I can protect it. So like knight h7, I was planning maybe to drop the bishop back to e3. So black does castle. Okay, so temporarily black is in a pin here. One way I could try to trade some pieces off would be take, bishop g4. I'm up 3 points of material, so trades should be good for me, all else being equal. But that looks kind of a little bit hasty because d4 is loose. Black would be double attacking d4. And I don't think I need to make this trade yet. That knight is pinned, so I don't have to hurry this. I'm actually really liking this f3 idea. Try to pry open this f file. Yeah, I really don't see a downside to that, so I'm going to go for it. So moving one pawn around the king, slightly opening the king on this diagonal, but I think it's going to be very tough for black to take advantage of that. You know, the bishop can't make an appearance here. Do have to watch tactics involving a knight takes d4 type move. Let's say if there was a black pawn here, then, you know, bishop c5 would be a problem. Okay, knight h7, I can see why black played that, but that blunders this. So let's pick up the rook. He does have the double attack on d4 now, but this is now Just way too much material. 3 points was already a lot, but now I've won another exchange. I can take on e4 now. I don't think I should even care about this pawn. Let's just take and open lines. Now I'm going to be having my rook operate down the f-file too. If black ends up taking this, d5 is going to be a fork. Queen takes d4 would be check, but I get to trade queens. I would definitely welcome a trade like that. So this is now too difficult for black to come back from. You know, if you were black in a game playing against someone around your own rating and you're at this rating level, I don't think you should resign yet. There's still a lot of play left. But it's an insurmountable lead for white. Okay, so he does take on d4 with the knight. That's probably better than taking with the queen, because at least he gets to keep material on board, more fighting resources. I'm probably going to take on d5. Just scanning for other moves that might be possible. Again, keeping in mind this diagonal leaning towards my king, like wary of the fact that he might put a bishop on c5. But taking here with tempo looks so good and natural. Could also take with the knight. Like knight takes is kind of nice too. Maybe I should do that because... Oh, and I actually got a Twitch notification. Someone subscribed to me even though I'm not live right now. Thank you to whoever that was. So I'm using the same overlay for my Twitch as recording locally here. All right, so yeah, knight takes d5 or pawn takes d5. Both are good. I mean, definitely both are good. I kind of like knight takes d5 the more I look at it. Knight takes d5, he could take on e2. I take with the queen, he takes b2. I play the rook over. That's going to be a lot of heat coming down on his king. Yeah, I think I'm going to go for that. I do isolate this pawn, but I think that's a minor concern. It's so much material now that the material is a much bigger deal. Yeah, if pawn takes, the only thing I slightly didn't like was that he could play bishop f5 and attack c2. I actually feel this is more threatening to black because now c3 could be an idea coming up, and I'm trying to pry open lines on the d-file to get at his king. If we can clear the traffic here, get rid of these knights in the way, that'll be great. Yes, I'm drinking my usual coffee. Fun fact, if you're a Starbucks Gold Card member, you get free refills on brewed coffee. So definitely take advantage of that. It's a good way to save money at Starbucks. I hear some of you saying if you want to save money at Starbucks, don't go to Starbucks in the first place, but we all have to have our vices. I'm self-employed. I work from home. I do chess full time, so I like getting out of my house and going to a coffee shop. I mentioned this before, but I figured out long ago, I like going to coffee shops and not necessarily talking to people, but just being in an ambiance where I'm around other people, being a little social. I get to check my email, catch up on whatever chess games were played in the previous day, just relax, read, do whatever. And paying a couple bucks for a coffee with a free refill is not a bad idea. But right now, it is actually after midnight right now. It's 12:15 a.m. Fortunately, I don't have to get up early tomorrow. But yeah, I probably shouldn't be drinking coffee at 12:15 a.m. So bishop c5, x-raying my king. I think a simple king h1 sidestep is called for here. Probably not much else to consider. Just this is an almost automatic move in these situations. I could have moved my knight as well. I could have played knight f4 because that knight is pinned, but I think it's just a good long-term investment and even a short-term investment just to sidestep with the king here. Don't worry about any discoveries then. Okay, and he plays king c8. I think that's a wise move because he's sensing the danger down the file if I get a chance to play a move like c3. Now I like bishop g4 because that's going to force the trade of the light square bishops. Don't really see anything else I can do. I mean, c3, he can take my bishop or move his knight. So yeah, let's play this. It's defended by the queen. You could say my queen is slightly overloaded because it's defending the bishop and the pawn on c2. But the thing is, if he takes here, I'm taking with check. I'm recapturing with check. So since he's avoided the tactics I was trying to set up on the d-file, now I'm just thinking war of attrition. How can I trade down and win this game? Because I've done more than enough to win in terms of material. Just got to keep my king safe, trade, take it to an endgame, and win. I'll still look for opportunities to attack as well, but I really do think that should be the blueprint most of the time when you're up this much material. Just trade. I mean, if I can get a queen trade, deprive black of their greatest fighting resource, the queen, then that would make things even easier. So queen e5, black centralizes. Looking at c3 here. I'm looking at knight takes e6. I'm liking c3 just to kick this knight out. There's no threat here. Maybe bishop d6 is a move I have to be aware of. Yeah, I could just take. Could just take on e6 and try to get black to misplace their queen. This pawn is hanging too, I should point out. So queen there is threatening that pawn. Yeah, maybe the capture is just best. I think I will take on e6. Capture with check. If knight takes, I really like the look of this g4 square for my queen. Pin the knight. If queen takes, I think then maybe c3. And queen takes blocks black from playing bishop d6 and setting up an immediate mate threat. Black's knight on h7 still isn't participating. So he does take with the queen. Yeah, c3 I think is what I'm going to do here. I can't play rook f8 note. That's covered twice. Knight f4 comes to mind here, but let's just get this knight out of the way. Ah, there's also b4. I'm just noticing b4 now. I didn't previously see that. But b4 trying to knock the knight... trying to knock the bishop off balance, which is in turn defending the knight. Yeah, I could definitely play that. b4, bishop b6, and I get to do another trade. And then maybe queen g4 and continue from there. Okay, yeah, why not? I mean, there's also that c3 move, but I see no reason not to do this. So bishop b6. I could get even more aggressive after bishop b6 and try to attack the bishop, maybe c4. For instance, c4, look for c5. That might not be half bad, because if c6, then I can take with check and black's queen is blocked. Because on bishop b6, knight takes, there is queen takes, and that will defend the knight. Although there's so many ways to win there. I mean, a rook invasion, rook f7 is looking very good, actually. Queen g4 check, as I mentioned. Okay, black takes on e4. So now I can take the bishop, black takes here, and maybe just c3. Looks simple. Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. King's still very safe. Yeah, and this is a unpleasant pin situation, so I can just play c3. If the knight moves, black loses the queen. So I wouldn't be completely surprised if black resigns, either here or very soon, because the pieces are coming off now. Queen takes, also rook f8 is now possible, but I think just queen takes. Continue with the policy, trying to trade down. I'll keep rook f8 in reserve, because if black moves somewhere where rook f8 might be possible, then that'll be mate. Or could be close to mate. Okay, so my opponent resigned. Archer74 Bluff, thank you for the game. As always, I'm going to send this to Archer74 Bluff. Let's take a quick look at this game. I'm just examining the mistakes, blunders, and missed wins that chess.com says. So 3 mistakes, 0 blunders, 0 missed wins. Let's take a look at the analysis. I hope you guys can see this. It's going to be a little off. I think I'm going to open it on the analysis board. That'll be easier. Close this guy. Okay, so I opened with e4. And we had the Italian game and then this Rousseau Gambit. Yeah, so I was mentioning that f5, I have seen this. This is the Latvian Gambit. This is also considered pretty dubious for black. I know Chess Explained, International Master Krzysztof Selecki. He's on YouTube. You should definitely check him out if you don't know who he is. But he has some very unkind things to say about the Latvian Gambit. He thinks it's basically a losing opening, and for good reason, too. It's very dubious. I mean, moving your f-pawn that early and essentially playing a King's Gambit in reverse, that's a tall order if you're playing the black pieces. But my opponent played it on move 3, which, yeah, it's just unusual. It's definitely an unusual idea here. I'm kind of curious what the computer recommends in this position. Can I add the engine? There should be some easy way to add the engine. I meant to do this before I started the video, but analyze. There we go. Okay, that's I think what I wanted. Yes. Nope. Except I hit the wrong thing. Sorry, guys. Close that one. Keep this one. You guys see that? Yes, you can. Okay. So let's add the engine and take it to f5 when this is played. So, by the way, if you're looking for a line here as black to play, bishop c5 and knight f6 are your best bets. Bishop c5 is Joko piano. You can get into main line stuff there. Knight f6 is the two knights defense. Also perfectly sound for black. But yeah, f5 I don't think can be recommended. And if we see the top lines recommended by Stockfish here, d4 right at the top. Yeah, d4 I think is just a good counter stroke here. Again, if I take on f5, I wasn't quite sure about his center pawn action. I'm kind of, in a sense, giving black what he wants. And the engine says e4 is a pretty good idea. Attack the knight, also follow with d5. Maybe this player has even played games with this, because I would bet a lot of people do take this pawn on f5, but yeah, that seems to be a reasonable line. I was also trying to think about parallels to the Latvian Gambit. So this line, in this line, knight takes e5 is the strongest thing to do, but I think d4 is also pretty good here too. So that's why d4 was in my head. You can sometimes do that in openings. You can draw parallels between similar lines. The trick is just knowing when those parallels are appropriate and when you should avoid them. So f5, yeah, d4, just opening lines, opening diagonals. And he took here. So I was saying if he takes here, my plan was to take with the knight. And just a sample line, if black takes here, I can take on c6 and then play queen check. And that should be winning a massive amount of material, because if g6, queen e5, you can see that's a fork on the king and the rook. Black loses. So he took e4, I took on e5. Yeah, and already black has to be very careful, I think. The engine even agrees with that. I have dual threats here. I have the threats on f7, as you saw in the game, and I also have queen h5 check, which is a huge threat. So if black somehow were to cover f7, queen h5 would still be an issue, because if g6, there's knight takes g6 at minimum, when h takes g6 would allow a capture on h8. So just to illustrate that, it's hard to even find like a good way to do this. Let's say d6. I could play knight f7 here, but again, this is going to be really, really strong. g6 and then take and use the pin on the rook. In this case, I bet even queen takes g6 is good. Yeah, that's mate in two, but a lot of times just picking up the rook will be more than enough. You can see even this is +5 or more for white. So yeah, he's in pretty serious trouble here. Just looking at what the engine says. The engine says d5 is pretty much the only move, and even then it's +1.5. Yeah, d5 I saw I could play bishop b5 or queen h5 check. Yeah, bishop b5 makes a lot of sense. Just double attack the knight, preserve the option of this. Maybe black can play queen d6. Yeah, queen d6 is the top move. But it's risky. White has a development advantage, c4, try to open further lines. This is exactly how you'd want to be thinking about playing if you had a lead in development here. Take down this strong center. Knight c3 is coming. Those pawns are unstable. Yeah, not a great position for black. But he developed knight f6, and I just saw no reason not to play knight f7, so went for it. Yeah, bishop f7 was the only other move I was seriously considering, but didn't really see what I gained by king e7. So went for the fork, queen e7, take. Yeah, and now it's all about not falling too far behind in development, like trying to catch up in development a little bit, not getting overly attached to the knight in the corner. If you're in this situation, just let the knight go. Get a pawn for it if you can, like I did when he played g6. Don't worry about it. You've already won a full rook, so we should be very happy about that. Just don't neglect your development and your king's safety. So, bishop takes d5. I didn't even see that move. Okay, that's nice. Did not even realize that was possible. That's a nice shot because knight takes d5, queen h5 check. Pick up the knight again. Yeah, okay. So I could have played that better. Bishop e2. Yeah, this didn't even cross my mind. Bishop b5 also looks decent, but like I said, I didn't want to allow bishop g4 with tempo. That was my rationale behind bishop e2. So bishop e2, he played g6. I just developed. I think that's fine. Queen here. I was expecting bishop g7, whereupon I was going to take and probably play this. So that's looking fine as well. You can play queen b4 in a lot of these instances and try to attack these pawns, but shouldn't be a big deal. I can castle on the king side too if I want to be flexible. Again, when black takes this way, I feel like castling on the king side's a little safer. There is the h-file, but black doesn't have any presence down the h-file. It takes a while for them to do that with getting the light square bishop out and castling. So queen g7 on the other hand, I took. Yeah, and this would have been interesting if black had taken with the queen, because I was saying I was going to play knight takes d5, which the engine approves of. Yeah, it likes this. Once I saw this idea, I couldn't resist it. At first I was thinking, maybe I shouldn't go for this. Looks unnecessarily risky, but if knight takes d5, there's bishop h5 with the skewer, winning the queen. And if queen takes g2, I take on f6, and I didn't look a whole lot further here. It just seems to me that after this and then rook over, black should really be struggling here. I mean, to get the knight back, king takes, black's king is super exposed. I can always just develop and whisk my king away. Black's losing here. But instead, black took with the h-pawn. So h takes g6. And now I developed bishop g5, developing with a threat too of taking and taking on d5, removing the defender. I think black's next moves were good. Bishop e6. I castled short. Black castled long. Again, if I wanted to, I could play queen d2 and castle long, but I was drawn to this idea of playing f3 quickly. So that's what I did right here. Yeah, computer approved. Fins tested, computer approved. Kicks. So, yeah, f3. And as I was saying, the f-pawn, the forget about it pawn, you want to be careful about moving it early in the game, as my opponent found out in this game. But now it's justified because my king is safe. My rook will be operating nicely along the file. There's this existing pin. I probably wouldn't have gone for this if there wasn't this pin already. But I have a clear threat of taking and then taking here. So black's already in pretty big trouble at this point. And now black blundered. It's tough, but yeah, probably black has to get out of the way. I mean, rook e8 I think would be a candidate move. Bishop e7, which is the second line that Stockfish gives here. But it's pretty rough. I can take here if I want to try to trade more. Queen d2 looks pretty good, yeah. Just waiting a bit before trading. Maybe play a rook over if I want some extra protection on the d-pawn. It's too much material. That black is already down here. But knight h7, I snatched the exchange, the other exchange. Take. And there wasn't a whole lot of intrigue after this. It was just staying safe, trying to trade down if possible, being alert here, king h1. Bishop g4, looking for a swap of the bishops, try to reduce black's counterplay. Yeah, if knight takes, I was thinking queen here would be good. Yeah, now that the queen was deflected from the knight, I noticed that this possibility of b4 was there. I was thinking bishop b6 should be played. Yeah, the engine finds many, many good ways to play against this. I was thinking about this and then rook f7 was one line to go after the knight, which is a really misplaced piece for black, because if here I can check here, there's probably a check on f8 and then maybe c3. Looks good. But yeah, that would be fine. Taking the bishop. Also c4 I think is good. Just come here. Pretty much anything reasonable is good for white. But instead, my opponent took on e4, I took on c5, and then played this c3 move, and yeah, black soon resigned. Okay, so yeah, this f5 line can't be recommended. It's too aggressive. I could definitely see how it may work at lower levels if white just blindly captures the pawn, but always remember to think at the first moment that your opponent is surprising you in the opening, especially if it's an opening where you played some standard moves you played many times and you're not even that far out of book. I mean, this is move 3, and black played a move that I wasn't aware of. So it definitely bears thinking about for more than your usual amount of time on a move like this. So let me know if you guys have any questions, and I'll be back again soon with another video. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy your week.